It's Friday, May the 15th, 2026, and it's time for The Swamp, where I cover daily updates on the federal machine. If you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like, subscribe, drop all the comments you want. Every article is linked below in the description, and the highlight segments from tonight's episode will drop tomorrow morning at some point. It's Saturday. Maybe I'll sleep in, but they'll drop at some point tomorrow morning if you're interested in checking out the highlights. And we're going to start tonight's episode with Kelly Loeffler with the Small Business Administration. The crackdown is here in full support and collaboration with the Vice President and the White House Fraud Task Force. The Small Business Administration is announcing the suspension of about 1,500 borrowers in Maine associated with $93 million in potentially fraudulent PPP and EIDL loans, I believe, presumably from the COVID era. At least that's where the PPP comes from. I believe that's both from the COVID era, both those acronyms. Like those who were suspended in California and Minnesota, these individuals will be prohibited from receiving any further Small Business Administration support. State by state, we're identifying fraudsters and ending their open season on taxpayer-funded programs. And I don't think it was just a coincidence that Vice President Vance was just in Maine the other day giving a rally talking about fraud and the White House Fraud Task Force. This is going to be from thecentersquare.com. And here, let me size this up a little bit. Obviously, I've not been to this website before. At least they're not paywalled, thank God. All right, Vice President J.D. Vance accused illegal aliens of stealing millions of dollars in federal funding from Maine taxpayers during a visit to the state aimed at propping up former Republican Governor Paul LePage's congressional bid. The vice president blasted Governor Janet Mills and other top Maine Democrats for not doing enough to crack down on fraud in the state's Medicaid program and other federally funded benefits. He said the state should get the Bronze Medal for public benefits fraud, tied with New York, and said much of it is being committed by people who are living in the U.S. illegally. Probably no surprise to anybody. Quote, what you have in Maine is a festering problem where people have been taken advantage of and they've been stolen from. Vance, of course a Republican, said in remarks in Bangor, flanked by supporters holding protecting taxpayer dollar signs, and your government hasn't done anything about it. Vance praised LePage, who was running against Democratic Rep Chris Pappas in Maine's 2nd congressional district, saying he was committed to cracking down on fraud while he was governor. I'm not just blowing smoke, friends. He took concrete action to try and fight against fraud, Vance said. So let me ask you the simple question. Do you like having a government official who fights for illegal aliens over you? Or do you like having a state governor who doesn't work with the federal government to fight against fraud? So let's kick Janet Mills to the curb and let's send Paul LePage to Washington to help us fight the fraudsters and protect all of you in Maine. There's no immediate response from Mills, a termed-out governor who recently suspended her bid for the U.S. Senate amid lackluster support. All right. Despite showing support for the former governor's congressional campaign, Vance's visit comes as the Trump administration is threatening a federal takeover if state leaders don't turn over details of state Medicaid payments for an investigation of potential fraud in the program. Vance announced Wednesday that the Trump administration is freezing new Medicare enrollments for hospice and home health agencies for the next 6 months for all states, all 50 states, not just Maine. In Thursday's remarks, Vance said the move is aimed at protecting people who depend on Medicare and taxpayers. We basically said, very simply, that we're going to take away your money unless you get serious about fighting fraud, Vice President Vance said. A January report by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Inspector General flagged nearly 100 Medicaid payments for autistic, rehabilitative, and community support services did not fully comply with federal and state requirements. The federal watchdog directed the state to repay at least $28.7 million for the federal share of the payments. Medicaid is jointly funded by states and the federal government. In Maine, the federal government covers most of MaineCare's $5.4 billion in annual spending, with the state contributing about $1.5 billion, according to federal data. Wow. So the federal government covers the overwhelming lion's share of Medicare or Medicaid in Maine. What is that? That's like probably 75%, give or take. Mills has pushed back on the claims, referring to CMS Director Mehmet Oz as a former TV doctor, yeah, of course, and accusing the Trump administration of using the allegations of fraud to punish Democrat-led states. She notes that MaineCare's improper payment error rate is 2.4%, which is less than half of the national average. Look, I mean, not sure if they're really singling out Maine. I guess if you're throwing around numbers like that, if that's an accurate number, if it's less than half the national average, then perhaps there's other states that they may need to be looking at perhaps ahead if they need to be looking at anything in order. However, 2.4%, it's still higher than zero. So regardless of whether or not they're at the national average or above or below or half the national average, still needs addressed. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee criticized Vance's trip to the state, saying it is trying to prop up LePage's campaign while extremist Washington Republicans rip away health care from tens of thousands of Mainers. J.D. Vance's trip to Bangor is just another desperate attempt to distract Mainers from the war Paul LePage and his extremist buddies in Washington are waging on their health care. DCC spokesperson Raya Vashilf said in a statement, "If Vance wants to talk about scams, he should talk about Republicans' big, ugly bill, which is already kicking tens of thousands of Mainers off Medicaid." Well, yeah, of course, illegal immigrants. Obviously, they're being kicked off of Medicare, Medicaid. Putting rural hospitals across the district at risk of closure, which, of course, they don't mention the one big, beautiful bill. $50 billion has been directed specifically for rural hospitals just for such a reason, so they don't have to go through closure if there are any shifts in the system. A lot of people getting, as they put it, kicked off of Medicaid. A lot of them are just simply either ineligible or they're not allowed to be inside this country. Maine's healthcare system to fund massive tax breaks to billionaires. Mainers see right through this charade and know that unlike LePage, Joe Baldacci will fight to protect their health care in Washington, not cheer on the politicians dismantling it. So, all right, well, there you go. That's the end of the article. I didn't think I'd actually get through it, but I got through it. TheCenterSquare.com. And we got another topic on the issue of fraud from Alpha News. Watch, the Minnesota House Fraud Prevention Committee releases its final report on the state's fraud crisis. We found that the Walz administration enabled fraud by having a culture that accepted fraud and did not hold anyone accountable in the agencies, said Chair Kristen Robbins. It's not new. It's not rocket science. We have seen the same pattern over and over and over.
Generally speaking,
in Minnesota,
we found that the Walz administration enabled fraud by having a culture that accepted fraud, tolerated fraud, tried to suppress fraud in some ways, and did not hold anyone accountable in the agencies. And the public sees that there are being criminal indictments and charges and sentencing for the criminals who engaged in this fraud through our federal partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we're grateful for the justice on the criminal side, but we also need accountability in the agencies and in the administration, and we will continue to push for that. Secondly, I think when we started this work, I don't think we even grasped the scale of the fraud. And I think one of the values of this committee is exposing the scope of the fraud that sadly has gone on in Minnesota government. We first saw it in childcare, then it went to feeding our future. And from there, that same pattern morphed into a lot of the Medicaid waivered services program. So many of the programs that we've looked at in our hearings: housing stabilization, integrated community support, sober homes, non-emergency medical transportation, all of these vectors of fraud in a lot of the Medicaid waivered services programs really were spawned from the original fraud back in childcare and then feeding our future. And some of the same actors were involved in these webs of fraud. And I just think, certainly I didn't fully understand that when we got into this, and I think that has been an important contribution of our work. So we also, on page 9, for anyone who's following along, the anatomy of fraud, which I know our colleague Representative Greenman also called the business model of fraud. We spent a lot of time talking about this and identifying these patterns, and I think that is an important thing for the public to look at and to understand, to recognize these signs, and for agency personnel to realize this is the pattern. It's not new. It's not rocket science. We have seen the same pattern over and over and over, and we have to clamp down on it right away. The agencies had the tools. They could have done more on the front end. They could have declared the programs high risk much earlier. They could have done unannounced site inspections. They could have done prepayment reviews. Any of these things years ago would have helped reduce the volume of the fraud, and it's unfortunate that did not happen.
Yeah, very unfortunate it didn't happen, but Democrats don't want to appear racist, though, so they just have to just look the other way and just allow it to keep continuing on and on. I don't know if it's really going to get better in Minnesota. It might, maybe for the next couple of years. Ultimately, I highly doubt it's going to get any better. They're just going to try to sweep as much under the rug as they possibly can. Inspector General Anthony De Esposito, he says $46.4 million stolen from public assistance programs and laundered to China. 120 months in federal prisons. Somebody got arrested for it and convicted. The message from Vice President's White House Fraud Task Force is simple. Steal from American taxpayers, lose your freedom. Solid work by the Department of Labor, OIG, and the FBI, and the MDPA News, U.S. Attorney, MDPA, Middle District of Pennsylvania. That's what that stands for. And from justice.gov. California man sentenced to 120 months in prison for fraudulently obtaining $46 million in public benefits and laundering proceeds to China. I'm not great at math, but I think that's 10 years, right? Pretty sure it's 10 years. Harrisburg, the United States Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Pennsylvania announced that Brian R. Cleland, age 72, a resident of Los Angeles, California, was sentenced on May 14, 2026 to 120 months in prison by the United States District Judge Jennifer P. Wilson for conspiracy to launder monetary instruments, and the amount of approximately $46.4 million. On April 7th, the Department of Justice announced the creation of the National Fraud Enforcement Division, or the Fraud Division. The Fraud Division is laser focused on investigating and prosecuting those who commit fraud against the American people. The department's work to combat fraud supports President Trump's task force to eliminate fraud, a whole-of-government effort chaired by Vice President J.D. Vance to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse within federal benefit programs. According to the United States Attorney Brian D. Miller, Cleland previously pleaded guilty on November 17th of last year and admitted that he and his co-conspirators, Bruce Jin, age 61, and Carlos A. Grijalva, age 60, both from LA, California, along with other unnamed co-conspirators, conspired to obtain state unemployment compensation funds and other public funds through fraudulent means. Cleland, Jin, Grijalva, and others entered into a series of agreements to make it appear as if they were operating legitimate businesses selling masks and other COVID-19 personal protective equipment. The funds that the defendants obtained and laundered through their companies were derived from fraudulently obtained state unemployment compensation, or UC, benefits. Economic impact payments or stimulus payments were also obtained through fraudulent means. Unnamed members of the conspiracy, including some believed to be located in China, established thousands of accounts at banks across the United States using the personal identifying information of identity theft victims. From there, fraudulent UC claims were generated and paid to these accounts, including accounts in the names of people residing in the Middle District of Pennsylvania. These fraudulent UC claims were also generated by fraudsters based in China. As a result of this fraudulent activity, millions of dollars of fraudulent UC payments were made by Pennsylvania and Virginia and Florida and other states. After UC funds were paid out, they were then transferred from identity theft victims' accounts to companies controlled by Cleland, Jin, and Grijalva. For instance, Jin, through companies that he controlled known as Ample International and Jin Commerce, received over $12 million in UC funds from the accounts of identity theft victims. In addition, the defendants used ACH processing, a type of electronic bank-to-bank transfer, to obtain over $45 million of fraudulent funds from the accounts of identity theft victims. This money mostly went from the accounts of identity theft victims to companies controlled by Cleland and Grijalva, including Mex US Service Group, Mex USA, CCB Group, GC Accounting, and Cleco, or CLECO. After that, Cleland and Grijalva transferred over $30 million to Jin's companies and over $6 million to a company controlled by an associate of Jin. After he received the fraudulent funds, either from identity theft victims' accounts or from Cleland or Grijalva, through ACH processing, he then made international wire transfers totaling over $35 million to a bank account associated with a company in China, which is known in the indictment as Company 2. Jin also transferred over $2 million directly to the individual in China who controlled that company, who is referred to as co-conspirator 2 in the indictment. Cleland was ordered to pay approximately $46.4 million in forfeiture. Jin, he was sentenced on April 30th to 144 months in prison, so he got even more time. It was ordered to forfeit over $59 million in U.S. currency, along with other properties. Grijalva has pleaded guilty and is scheduled to be sentenced on May 19th of 2026, so in just a few days. Probably will get at least 10 years, I would imagine. Federal Bureau of Investigation in the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of the Inspector General investigated the case. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Ravi Romel Sharma and K. Wesley Misso and U.S. Department of Justice Trial Attorney Patrick B. Gushu prosecuted the case. There you go. So a lot of money that they are indeed recovering. So fantastic news that they're getting at least a sizable portion of it back. And from Rapid Response 47, the president gives his signature fist pump in one final wave as he boards Air Force One following his historic state visit to China. And he is out of there, heading back to the United States of America. Back in Air Force One, I at least not to my knowledge, I don't think he's making any stops anywhere between China and back here. I think that Air Force One is heading straight back. Such as like the King Charles, when he visited the U.S., he didn't go straight back to the U.K. He stopped in Bermuda to do some like state visit in Bermuda. But I don't think that President Trump's stopping anywhere else. I'm pretty sure I would have come across something if he had any plans of doing so. And from the White House, President Donald J. Trump departs Beijing following a historic summit, heading home to the United States. And from the White House again, Zhong Nanhai, Beijing, May 15th, 2026. I know I butchered that name. At least I try. I mean, I'm terrible at pronouncing stuff, but, I give it my best. Of course, President Xi and President Trump. United States Trade Representative in the United States is enhancing economic ties with China, securing billions in purchase commitments of U.S. industrial and agricultural goods. And Jameson Greer, that's the individual here, is the United States Trade Representative, and let's hear what he says.
We're in a situation where we're trying to rebalance our trade with China. We've had a lot of success in that. Our trade deficit with China went down by a third last year, in 1 year. And so we're trying to manage the trade around the kinds of things we want to be selling to China, whether it's Boeings or soybeans or other ag or energy or medical devices. And so you can see us bit by bit building up this strategy. Coming out of this week, you heard the president today talk about the Boeings and hundreds of Boeings being purchased by China. We already have a soybean deal with them from our prior meetings of 25 million metric tons a year over the next 3 years, and we expect to also see an agreement for double-digit billion purchases of ags over the next 3 years per year coming out of this visit, and that's more general. That's aggregate. That's not just soybeans. That's everything else.
But so I guess they haven't stolen enough intellectual property from Boeing in order to make some copycat company and start producing Boeing-style jets of their own? I guess not. I mean, at least they haven't yet. I guess they keep all those plans under tight lock and key. Maybe they don't have any of their intellectual property in any way, shape, or form accessible through the internet, which is a very good idea. United States Trade Representative, we got one more. In just 1 year, our trade deficit with China has dropped by 33% as America's manufacturing base continues to expand. This actually might be, well, no, it's from the same account, so it shouldn't be an overlap. But let's take a look.
As the trade representative, I'm looking at outcomes. And 1 year in, our trade deficit with China has dropped by 33%. That's incredible. It went down by $130 billion last year. That's what we want to see. That means we're diversifying from China. We're making more stuff here. We're seeing the manufacturing indicators and manufacturing labor indicators increase in the United States. That's what we're looking at. It's less, it's not this issue of China versus America as much as it is we're pro-America. And we want our domestic economy to do really well. And we have to kind of manage and control our economic relationship with China to make sure we can achieve our domestic economic goals.
I don't know, man. I'd say on the world stage, it kind of is a U.S. versus China situation that the modern era is in. Maybe he's probably just speaking with regard to trade, but I would even argue that it even pertains to trade too, with China expanding out all throughout South America, all throughout Africa, getting a chokehold on rare earth minerals and other minerals and land, agriculture, the whole 9 yards, man. They're encroaching all over the world. And from Rapid Response, did you talk about fentanyl at all? And the president said, I did. So let's hear what he says.
Did you talk about fentanyl at all?
I did. I talked about fentanyl. As you know, I put a tariff on because of fentanyl, and they discussed that. But I put a penalty. It's a penalty. A lot of money we take in because of that. I'd prefer not taking it, and I'd prefer that we don't have. But we did talk about fentanyl.
What kind of agreement did you come to?
Well, the fentanyl is way down from where it was, and it could be because of the tariff penalty.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly down. It's not gone, though. In fact, I think just the opposite's happening. Which state was it? In California, I think it was, where they found a new strain of fentanyl that hit the streets that they apparently they knew about it. However, it's something that's brand new that they're just starting to find out on the street. So, and it's even more deadly and more potent than the current strain, main or primary strain of fentanyl, whatever it is that's out there. There's something that is even stronger than fentanyl out there right now, probably coming from China. And the president on AI discussions with China. It's a quote, so we'll just hear it.
We're leading by a lot, but they're second and they're very strong. And we talked about possibly working together for guardrails.
And what kind of guardrails?
Standard guardrails that we talk about all the time. AI is fantastic. So many things can happen in terms of health and medicine and operations, everything. Military, and so many things can happen, but it's also got some drawbacks, and we're talking about, we probably will. We're going to work together. We had a very good conversation about a lot of stuff.
Or, you know, like AI could end up becoming Skynet and turning everything into the Matrix maybe at some point. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that it's a good idea that we're even shipping our old chips to China, which we are doing. I believe that the federal law is something like 3 generations behind that what is it, NVIDIA and other tech companies, chip makers, they can ship their chips over to China for them to use for their AI systems, but they can't ship the newest versions of them. I believe it's maybe it's 2 generations, but I think it's like 3 generations. So that would, as long as China has a dependence on AI chips from America, they're always going to be somewhere around 4 or 6 years behind us, which, yeah, that's a great idea. It's good. That's a good policy to have in place. I just don't think we should be selling them to them at all. You know, I mean, if they want to get into the AI game, do what we're doing, make them up or just invent them and innovate and do your AI thing. During the Beijing summit, the president raised the cases of imprisoned Christians with President Xi directly. She said he'd strongly consider releasing Pastor Ezra Jin, whose Beijing church has 18 members currently in prison. For what? For being a Christian? On pro-democracy publisher Jimmy Lai, 78, diabetic, sentenced to 20 years, likely to die in prison. Trump said she called it a tough one, quote unquote tough one. We can't give up, said Senator Rick Scott, who's my senator. And let's see, the Elizabeth Troutman Mitchell, White House correspondent, reports. And we've got this from the Daily Signal. And she reported it. What she said to Trump about imprisoned Christians in China. President Trump said Chinese leader Xi Jinping is hesitant to release imprisoned Christian Jimmy Lai, a pro-democracy newspaper publisher. Trump told reporters he spoke to Xi during the Beijing state visit about imprisoned Christian pastor Ezra Jin and said Xi was giving very serious consideration to his release. Jin, the pastor of Zion Church, which was founded in Beijing, was detained in November of last year. He is one of 18 members in the church who are imprisoned. But the president expressed less confidence about the release of Lai. I discussed Jimmy, Trump said. He's a tougher one. I did bring it up. It's a tough one. For him, it's a tougher one. Jimmy Lai is a Hong Kong businessman who founded the pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily. She told me, I don't want to mislead anybody. He said Jimmy Lai is a tough one for him. He went through a lot, right or wrong, went through a lot. So he told me he would be a tough one. He said he's strongly going to consider the pastor. In February, 78-year-old Lai was sentenced to 20 years, meaning he'll probably die in jail. He's convicted in December on 2 counts of conspiring to collude with foreign forces and a charge of conspiracy to publish seditious materials. See, that's where things get really hairy with regard to communism. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has condemned Lai's sentence. Quote, the Hong Kong High Court's decision to sentence Jimmy Lai to 20 years is an unjust and tragic conclusion to this case. It shows the world that Beijing will go to extraordinary lengths to silence those who advocate fundamental freedoms in Hong Kong, casting aside the international commitments Beijing made in the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration. Well, part of that declaration, I thought they were supposed to keep hands off of Hong Kong till like 2035 or something. I thought it went into like the 2030s where China, the Chinese government would not interfere with the affairs of Hong Kong. That was part of the I don't know, the whole agreement or whatever. And I guess that like Britain, when was that? 5 or 6 years, something like that, where like Britain completely severed ties with Hong Kong. I believe I'm remembering that right. And China immediately started moving in and changing things. All right, so Rubio has also urged authorities to grant Lay humanitarian parole, arguing that Lay and his family have suffered enough. Leading up to Trump's visit to Beijing, Rep. Chris Smith, Republican of New Jersey, and Senator Rick Scott, Republican of Florida, led 105 members to Congress in penning a letter urging Trump to fight for Jimmy Lay's full and unconditional release when meeting with President Xi at the upcoming summit. Well, I mean, he brought it up. Scott praised Trump for doing everything he can to get Jimmy Lay free. Sometimes doing the right thing means having to negotiate with an absolutely despicable dictator like Xi, Scott told the Daily Signal. Jimmy is a 78 diabetic suffering solitary confinement only because he believes in freedom. We can't give up. I'm going to keep fighting for Jimmy's release no matter what it takes. So, not sure if it's going to happen. It honestly doesn't sound like that it's going to end up happening, but at least Trump brought it up, and he did the best he could to fight for his release. But who knows? I mean, like, a lot of surprising things has happened. During Trump's first and second terms. He got a lot of prisoners released all over the world just this year and last year alone. And from Jack Posobiec on President Xi pushing President Trump to accept 500,000 Chinese students in America. I thought it was 600,000, but hell, 500,000, that's fine. What was it? I want to say that they agreed to something like 300,000 per semester, up to 600,000 a year. I don't know. It was like maybe a month or two ago when that subject was in the news. Quote, "This is leverage. President Trump has leverage with the Chinese students. These are the sons and daughters of the elite in the CCP." This is from Human Events. You would think that they wouldn't want their children to be getting, college educated in America because of how quote unquote woke the universities are, and how psychopathic a lot of these professors have become. But maybe they're only entering science, engineering, technology, math, the STEM fields. Perhaps maybe that's what they're sticking to. They're not getting, underwater lesbian basket weaving degrees from the liberal arts schools and so on and so forth.
And, of course, lots of questions as well on the role of Chinese students. And I think what's interesting about the Chinese students quotient, that President Trump saying that China was pushing very strongly for the 500,000 Chinese students to come to America, also stating that it was helpful, of course, for the universities. But something that I think was unsaid there was how much of a priority the Chinese students, the 500,000, are for the CCP. This is leverage. President Trump has
lift up the
leverage
platform
with the Chinese students. These aren't just random Chinese students who excel at the Gaokao, basically their SATs and then do well. No. These are the scions of the party. These are the sons and daughters of the elite in the CCP. And President Trump knows that he can pull those visas at a moment's notice. And this is something, of course, Stephen Miller knows and has talked about many, many times. So the fact of the matter remains that those students are something that Xi Jinping was pushing very strongly for, as well as the farmland. That means it's of utmost importance to the Chinese Communist Party. Now, if it were me, I'd say deport them all, shred every single one of those Chinese student visas,
100%.
and get rid of all the farmland. There's no reason that they should have investment in our country like that. But of course, President Trump, on his way back from Beijing, he made those comments while on Chinese soil. Then, of course, when he was on Air Force One, he was still in Chinese airspace. The most aggressive, though, of course, were the comments on Taiwan, and I've been extremely outspoken about that. The president, of course, responded. He said, well, perhaps Xi Jinping was talking about America fading under Joe Biden. But the fact remains, that was said with the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, in the room, the Great Hall of the People in Tiananmen Square. It was the most aggressive we've ever heard China or any Chinese leader on Taiwan. They made it their top line issue and referred to the United States as a fading power. Folks, we got to wake up to this. Very excited and honored to have next on the program.
All right. Well, yeah, so that's Jeff Posobiec. I'm pretty sure that he's fluent in Mandarin, and I believe that he lived in China for a period of time. Maybe he didn't, but I believe that he did for at least some period of time. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said just the other night, maybe if we brought all the manufacturing that we have interest in with Taiwan, bring it back here onto American soil, and whatever interest that we have with Taiwan, I'm assuming it's primarily manufacturing and for economic reasons. And I get it, like diplomatic reasons too, because back in the day when the CCP took over, the other party, the party of freedom and liberty, they were they were excommunicated out of China, and they moved out into Taiwan in exile, and China wants to take over Taiwan now. So I think I got that history right. Anyway, so Senator Todd Young, he says the nation needs over 1,300 commercial ships in various classes to mitigate Chinese economic coercion and meet our military needs. Passing My Ships Act is critical to reviving America's maritime industry. We're already building ships, though. I mean, that was part of one of the last spending packages. Or actually, I believe that's what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth was talking about. Part of the $1.5 trillion in military spending, that they want a new fleet of ships built. And it sounds like that's going to happen regardless. I think that's already been on the table, though. I believe they're already building ships, which they announced at some point last year. America needs over 1,300 commercial ships to counter Chinese economic coercion and meet military needs. Okay, well, commercial ships, not military ships. President Trump has been, hold on. All right, here we go. That's better. President Donald Trump has been dogged in his focus on reviving the nation's maritime industry, shipbuilding, and shipping. On this point, driven by China's threats, there have been a consensus for the past several years that a stronger Navy is urgently required. However, building that fleet and sustaining it requires a revival of America's moribund maritime industrial base. Progress has been notable but tentative, and the president's meeting with China's Xi Jinping comes at a critical moment in this endeavor. The summit with Xi Jinping offers an opportunity to bolster our nation's maritime revival. Key to this mission is holding Beijing accountable for its predatory maritime practices, as you affirmed in Section 301 complaints that year. Fees on foreign-flagged ships calling in American ports should be reinstated in associated penalties pursuant to Section 301. This will finance the Maritime Security Trust Fund to be established by executive order and is critical to creating a favorable environment for the American maritime industry. Beyond the summit, our national focus must be on regaining an American maritime comparative advantage in the global maritime marketplace and clawing back market share. As this author has often argued, this is possible and urgently needed. That in mind, our nation has a unique opportunity as global demand for new commercial shipping is on track to outstrip production in the coming years, something our Japanese and South Korean allies recognize. Their investments are partly fueled by the promise of maritime prosperity zones, also directed by executive order and also embraced by Congress. The president's executive orders and maritime action plan point the way and must be implemented aggressively to begin what will be a decade-long endeavor. Temporary Jones Act regulatory waivers might modestly mitigate the impacts of the current conflict with Iran, but they will not carry the nation far enough. America needs assured shipping, as recognized in the 1989 National Security Directive, NSD-2828. Research conducted by the Heritage Foundation indicates the nation needs over 1,300 commercial ships in various classes to mitigate Chinese economic coercion and meet our military needs. The scale of the shipping deficit and the urgency to address this vulnerability make clear that Allied participation will be key. Locking in the momentum so far achieved requires memorializing executive orders and law. Today is the best reflected in the proposed Ships for America Act, which Heritage Foundation has played a foundational role in. God knows how much that's going to cost. 1,300 ships? Yeah. Billions, probably, upwards of probably over $500 billion. Additionally, the move to retool Development Finance Corporation's political risk insurance and guarantee for shipping protection and indemnity. P&I insurance in the Persian Gulf is welcome and critical. The implications, however, go far beyond the Persian Gulf, and this effort should be expanded with an eye to the Pacific. And it goes on from there, so I'm not going to just keep going and just boring 99% of us with these details. But this is on National Security Journal. It'll be linked in the description if you want to read more into that. And we got this from Anna Paulina Luna. I told you the Chinese have been running psyops, bot farms, and everything in between. A lot of these left-wing pro-Marxist groups are funded by them, and they intentionally are targeting the right. I'm assuming she meant to put Marxist, maybe. Anyway, so Fox News Politics. Fox News investigation. 425 organizations with a combined $1 billion in annual revenue coordinate 736 anti-Israel Nakba 78 protests across 39 countries today. A transnational network that includes communist groups, Marxist-funded nonprofits, and coalitions linked to Chinese Communist Party sympathizers. The campaign's own materials don't call for a ceasefire or two-state solution. They call for the dismantling of Israel itself, framing the U.S. as a fascist, imperialist, genocidal settler state, and erasing Israel's name entirely from their literature. The U.S. leads all nations with 187 events planned. See, all that money's coming from somewhere. And they are very well funded. All these paid protesters, that's what they do. A lot of them, that's their full-time job. They protest for a living. That's literally all they do. And Brianna Morello, a report, President Donald Trump is expected to dismiss his $10 billion lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service as part of a deal to establish a $1.7 billion compensation fund for individuals and groups who say they were improperly targeted by the Biden administration. According to sources familiar with the matter who spoke to ABC News, the independent commission managing the fund would have broad discretion to distribute the roughly $1.7 billion in taxpayer money to resolve claims from anyone alleging harm from the Biden administration's alleged weaponization of the legal system. Probably a lot of January 6th individuals who were politically imprisoned. This includes the nearly 1,600 people charged in connection with the January 6th Capitol riot, as well as potentially Trump-affiliated entities. Although the settlement is anticipated to be finalized within days, sources stress that the exact terms remain subject to change until they are formally announced. And it did say ABC News, though, right? I believe it did. ABC News. So I posed the question to Grok, is there any sources with this? And yeah, the report from ABC News citing anonymous sources. Okay, so anonymous sources. So in other words, yeah, it's not confirmed. At least as far as I'm concerned, if it's anonymous sources, that's not confirmation of anything. But anyway, this is what they're reporting on. Trump's expected to drop his $10 billion IRS lawsuit in exchange for a $1.7 billion compensation fund for those claiming Biden-era weaponization harm, including some January 6 defendants. And I'll just link the story if you want to have a look at that. And we're going to rock and roll to the next story, the next topic, the next subject from Benny Johnson. Jerome Powell has officially stepped down as chairman of the Federal Reserve after 8 years. And that's it. That's all I got as far as that goes. I mean, what else do we need to know? He finally stepped down. And Kevin Warsh has been confirmed as the new chairman of the Federal Reserve. He was confirmed, what was that, the day before yesterday? Maybe it was yesterday, but it was this week. He was confirmed this week. All right. Anna Paulina Luna, one more. Well, what do we have here? Florida politics. Kevin Steele of Florida to challenge U.S. Rep Kay Castor in new CD14. Reporting by Janelle Irwin of Florida. So this is on Florida politics. So the midterms, they're heating up. They're getting hotter. And let's see, the wealthiest member of the Florida House, Steele, will have plenty of his own cash to dump into the race. State Rep Kevin Steele, a Pasco County Republican, well, that is the county that is just north of the county that I live in, it borders my county, to the north, will run for Florida's 14th Congressional District, seeking to challenge Democratic U.S. Rep Kathy Castor after mid-decade redistricting made her previously safe district more competitive for Republicans. Under the new map, which is being challenged in court, of course, CD14 shifts southeast and becomes considerably more favorable to Republicans. Under the new lines, almost 55% of voters supported Donald Trump for president, while just 44% supported Democrat Kamala Harris. Steele blasted Castor for her long tenure in Congress, touting the fact that she will now have to face a difficult campaign after representing a reliably Democratic district for nearly 2 decades. For nearly 20 years, Kathy Castor has sat comfortably in Washington, while Tampa families have struggled with rising costs, shrinking opportunities, and failed leadership. She voted for the reckless policies that drove up prices, hurt small businesses, weakened our economy, and made the American dream harder to reach for Tampa-based families. So I'm over in Pinellas County. I'm not over in Tampa. I'm in the St. Pete, Clearwater area. So Rep Anna Paulina Luna is my rep. And they're talking about Kathy Castor, who represents, I'm assuming, Tampa. All right, so let's see. Made the American dream harder to reach for Tampa-based families. It's time to term limit Kathy Castor and send someone to Congress who understands what it means to work, sacrifice, and fight for every opportunity. Steele's announcement means he will no longer seek re-election to his current seat in the House District 55, which may feel to some in the Pasco-based district as a bit of whiplash. It was only 2 months ago that Steele jumped back into his re-election fight. Before that, he had been running for chief financial officer, allegedly at the urging of some Trump administration officials. So, all right. And we'll head on back rather than just reading through all of it. I actually got a lot to get through tonight. It turned out to be a very busy Friday. I didn't expect a whole lot to really be happening today, being Friday, but yeah, there's a lot that happened actually. Colin Rugg, new Democrat Rep Steve Cohen issues in a somber statement after announcing he would not be running for re-election following redistricting in Tennessee. Cohen is accusing Republicans of silencing the black vote in Memphis. Yeah, says the white guy representing all the black people in Memphis. These districts were drawn to beat me. They were drawn to defeat me. Well, you think whatever you want. But let's hear what he says.
Something special about Memphis. We're not going to have that. And I feel bad for my constituents because a lot of them come up to me regularly and say, please, we're for you and don't quit. Don't quit. I've had people tell me as recently as today, African American and Caucasian, don't quit.
Well, what's hilarious about all this, Mr. White Dude Democrat, he is not going to be seeking re-election because it looks like it's a pretty solid Republican district now. And she's not the only one. I believe that there's a couple of other contenders for the seat, but there is a black woman Republican who's running for that seat. So fancy that.
And I don't want
of course, Democrats won't tell their constituents that.
These districts were drawn to beat me. They were drawn to defeat me. And I had an uncle a long time ago who told me many pithy statements. And he said, Steve, never put your head in a lion's mouth. And this is what I would be doing, to go out. And I can't represent counties all the way to Williamson County that have nothing in common with Memphis. And Memphis is that's my Jones. It's Memphis, and I get things from Memphis. You look around here, there's the baseball park, which I got the state funding to help make it happen.
Dude, you've been around long enough.
The Memphis State Tigers.
These people need to retire anyway.
The bridge over here, which is a bridge we got, it's a walking and bicycle bridge across the Mississippi River, which I got the funding for that.
I'm sure so many people use it.
Home looking at it over the
maybe they do.
But Memphis is my home, and that's what I fight for, and I want to do it again. If I get the chance, I'll do it. But otherwise, I'll be retiring from Congress and from public life.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea regardless, dude. What are you, pushing 100? You're old. You're really old. Time to let some new blood in to run things. Especially the fact isn't Memphis the most crime-ridden place in the entire state of Tennessee? So you're not really doing all that great of a job. Although, to be fair, he is up on the federal level. He's not a local politician, but still. All right, Eric Daugherty. Now, Scott Presler, mic drops Timu, Obama, Hakeem Jeffries, and House Democrats for melting down because Republican states are finally redistricting. And this should be some fireworks.
Show you who they are, Brian. Believe them. And it's so funny to say Kamala Harris, that no idea is a bad idea. And I think that's emblematic of the Democrat
that's something she would
Party. They're just mad that the Republicans are fighting back peacefully and using the very tools that they have used against us for decades. We are fighting fire with a gosh darn flamethrower, and they are desperate.
So when you look at the seat pickup on redistricting, which is likely to happen, what is the max Republicans could pick up?
Was it like 16?
Well, this is important for us to use our voice right now, that if Alabama is only going to do one seat and not two, that could be the difference maker on whether or not Republicans keep the majority.
Oh, okay. It actually might be 12. I want to say it's actually 12, not 16. But regardless, it's in the double digits that Republicans stand to gain by redistricting all these states. And from Mays, during Trump's first term, Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas called for him to be removed via the 25th Amendment numerous times. During the Biden presidency, Warren covered up Biden's decline. When asked about it after he left office, she laughed. Classic Farmahontas. Farmahontas. I like that one. Partisan, hack, fraud.
If senior administration officials think
oh my God, dude, that's way
the
too
United
loud.
States is not able to do his job,
Bad enough we got to listen.
Then they should invoke the 25th Amendment. I had not seen decline. He was sharp. He was on his feet. I saw him. Live event.
Can you say gaslighting? All right. Of course, we all knew that Biden was in decline. Everybody knew. She knew he was in decline. I think, well, at least for me, the most memorable moment of his decline was when he was meeting at, what was that, like one of the G summits, like the G7 or whatever. And the Italian prime minister was there, Meloni, I think her name is. And she was standing right next to him, and he just like turned, faced his back to the cameras and just started walking in some random direction. There's like nothing but an open field behind them. There was nothing behind them. There was nothing. And he just started walking that direction. So she took like 4 or 5 steps back and then tried to corral him back to the group. It was unreal. And he absolutely looked like he had no idea what freaking year it was. All right, so anyway, RNC Research, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says, I like where you're going with this. D.C. will become the 51st state, and we will get 2 Senate seats. Now, don't forget, if the Democrats, if they get the House and the Senate and they end up retaking the presidency, they're going to nuke the filibuster. They're going to pack the Supreme Court. They will make D.C. a state. They'll certainly make Puerto Rico a state. Maybe they'll start brokering deals with Canada to start, piecing more states together from our neighbors up north even. Now that they're under the protection of the Golden Dome. So picking up more and more and essentially making it to the point where they'll have power for the foreseeable future. Or control, full control.
Gets a Senate seat, maybe, becomes a state, and we'd had 2 Senate seats, you wouldn't run. Okay, well, let's talk.
So I like where you're going with this, because what you're saying is D.C. will become the 51st state, and we will get 2 Senate seats.
Oh, it's possible.
Yeah. Well, and plus, I can't forget the U.S. Virgin Islands. They would probably make that a state, probably Guam, and, whatever territories that we have that I'm missing. All these Democrat states that they would just add to the union, just on the name of just clenching onto power. And from Mays, no, Bernie, we are rapidly moving toward oligarchy. And this should be interesting.
This great country of ours is moving very rapidly in the direction of oligarchy. The United States of America today is increasingly becoming an oligarchy.
By the way, in the 1980s, I want to say it was 1986, he got married and he went on a honeymoon. And the one place in the world that he chose to take his newlywed wife to honeymoon was Soviet Russia. He went to the USSR on his honeymoon. Can't make that up.
More and more moving toward an oligarchy. We are moving in the direction of oligarchy. We will move even more rapidly in the direction of an oligarchy. This great country is evolving into an oligarchic society. It is called oligarchy, and that is the system we are rapidly moving toward. This is a budget that moves our country rapidly into the direction of oligarchy. A handful of billionaires are moving this entire planet toward an oligarchic society.
Start off with the bad news, which is pretty bad, and that is that under Donald Trump, this country is hurtling rapidly toward oligarchy.
What a retard. All right, whatever. Well, ban lobbying. How about that? That'll probably solve 90% of your oligarchy problems. Get rid of lobbying. Just completely tear down K Street. And then we probably won't have a whole lot in way of an oligarchy that we'd have to deal with. I'm sure there's probably other things that they would probably have to take care of with regard to the influence of the billionaires and soon to be trillionaires, which we're going to get to that in a little bit. Yeah, there's some news that a certain somebody may be rapidly ascending to trillionaire status in a matter of weeks. And I'm not excited about that, but I am excited about the news that comes with it. But anyway, so Bernie Sanders, are we still a democracy? When I talk about oligarchy, I'm not just referencing the extraordinary concentration of ownership in our economy. I'm not just talking about the unprecedented level of income and wealth inequality or the increased billionaire control of our media. I'm talking about how the very, very rich and their super PACs are now buying our political system and undermining the very foundations of American democracy. In the 2024 elections, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, spent at least $290 million to elect Trump. Yeah, because he single-handedly got Trump elected. Yeah, okay. I would say that title would go to the American majority. In that campaign, the 100 richest people in the country spent $2.6 billion to elect the candidates of their choice. And now, as we enter the 2026 elections, we're seeing billionaires spend far more money in a midterm election than at any time in history. Okay, well then ban that too. Just make it so that across the board, whether if you're a company, an individual, a PAC, a super PAC, like $3,000, that's it. Make it so that they can't raise an unlimited amount of money. All right, anyway, it's estimated that super PACs from the AI industry, crypto, AI PAC, and other special interests could spend billions of dollars to elect senators and members of Congress who represent their interests. You as a citizen get one vote. They as oligarchs, they get to buy the candidates. It's not democracy. That's the government of the United States becoming a wholly owned subsidiary of the billionaire class. If we're going to create a government that works for all and not just the 1%, we have to end Citizens United and get super PACs out of elections and move to public funding of elections. Yeah, public funding. Yeah, dude, that'll solve all our problems. Just inching us closer to freaking communism. That's what he really wants. But of course, we all know that. You know, he just wants us to become a socialist, communist society because, yeah, that totally works everywhere else. I mean, it hasn't worked at all. Not one single time. RNC Research, Pennsylvania Democrat congressional candidate Bob Brooks and Pete Buttigieg caught being coached on how to be authentic when interviewing about his race. Buttigieg says, remind me the district number again, District 7. I know it's Buttigieg. I know, I'm just messing around.
Have a really normal conversation with 3 cameras pointing at you.
Everybody act normal.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So, I mean, we have a healthy amount of time. And so I think it'd be great, kick it off how you normally would. Thanks for having me here. And also, thanks for getting the race, what brought you here, however you sort of want to ask the questions of why is Bob running, why this race, think about your audience, why is this race so important, we need to win the House, all of that. Winning over
Trump.
People who feel like they're left behind by the party, flipping a district, all of that I think is really strong, talking about showing up for working people, affordability. Bob, feel free to prompt.
Republicans are already taking care of that.
Why this race? Why here in the Lehigh Valley? And we will interject if needed to do a little directing, but mostly we're gonna be completely hands off.
Cool. Okay. And we can just address each other, right?
You can just
do I'm here with Bob.
No,
okay.
You're just talking to each other.
Yeah, they're telling them what to do
and
across the board.
The district number. We're in these 7.
Does he even know where the hell he's at? Oh, good grief. All right. Well, there you go. That's politics for you. And yeah, Democrats, if they really cared about the working class, why are they the party of raising taxes? Why don't they just get rid of all the taxes they could possibly get rid of? I don't get that, because that would certainly help the middle class. That would help the working class. Not that they give a shit. Libs of TikTok, 83-year-old Democrat Rep Frederica Wilson has been missing from Congress for a month and hasn't cast a single vote since April 17th. I thought Hakeem Jeffries was casting votes on her behalf or something like that. Maybe that's somebody else. Anyway, Haitians strengthen our communities. So I guess she's missing in action. So there you go. That's all it was. Just pointing that out, that she hadn't been in Congress in a month. Resist the mainstream. Barack Obama says he pulled it off without firing a missile at Iran. We got 97% of their enriched uranium out. There's no dispute that it worked, and we didn't have to kill a whole bunch of people or shut down the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know, that kind of smells like gaslighting too.
We pulled it off. Without firing a missile, we got 97% of their enriched uranium out.
What did Iran get?
They were able to maintain a modest civilian nuclear program for energy. And
so you think it was working?
Well, not only did I think it was working, even Israeli intelligence thought it was working. Even our intelligence
well, that's just like your opinion, man.
So there's no dispute that it worked. And we didn't.
It didn't work. They're enriching uranium now.
Kill a whole bunch of people or shut down the
Fury.
Strait of Hormuz. Now.
Well, there was some dispute that it didn't work.
Well,
our present president believed that it didn't work, which is why he pulled out.
Well, dude, they've got uranium dust underground right now after the bombing with the B-2s back in last June, and everybody's clear on that. Everybody's on the same page as far as that goes. There's enriched uranium underground in those sites that we blew up last summer. So they have been enriching uranium. What Barack Obama didn't work. In fact, they took that $1.6 or $1.8 billion in cash and they used it to purchase more supplies to enrich uranium.
It's not clear that he didn't believe that it didn't work. He just said it didn't work.
Worst deal of all.
Isn't that what you're doing right now? Oh, it totally worked.
Which is fine. That seems to be a pattern. But there was no serious independent folks who would say that it didn't work with respect to the nuclear program. Now, if your agenda was to bring about regime change in Iran, Well, that wasn't the goal of the agreement. If your goal was to dismantle the Iranian military so that it couldn't cause any other problems in the region, then it didn't do that, but that wasn't the goal.
Yeah, but they enriched uranium all the way up until last summer. And as the Trump administration argues, they kept enriching uranium even after we conducted that Operation Midnight Hammer last summer. So obviously what Barack Obama did didn't work. All right, so Alex, was this you, SPLC Center? Be honest. I don't think anybody would have any doubt that they had a hand in it, probably. But this is from the AF Post. A historic black cemetery in Palmetto, Florida was vandalized after headstones were toppled and spray painted with Trump and DeSantis. And these are the images. So left-wing psychopaths, scums of the earth, they vandalized a historic black cemetery and they painted Trump all over it. Absolutely despicable. So that's why we gotta definitely win the midterms bigly, because we'll have more of this nightmare nonsense to have to deal with. Senator Jim Banks, you didn't voice your views. You broke our border on purpose. You let millions of unvetted illegal aliens invade our country, and you defended it. That's why we voted to impeach you in 2024. And this is former Secretary Mayorkas. He says that he disagreed with Biden administration immigration policy and suggests that border security should have been tightened sooner. There were areas of disagreement within immigration policy, but I voiced my views. And let's see, this is the same guy repeatedly assured the country that the border was secure. Now he wants a history rewrite.
Did you feel that you had the support from the president in order to succeed? There were areas of disagreement within immigration policy and in other areas, but I voiced my views. I was very pleased that in June of 2024, we took executive action that I thought made reforms that were sensible.
Now, why did you do that in the summer of 2024? Oh, yeah, because you had an election that your party wanted to win.
And that proved...
Why not do that in 2021?
Successful. If those executive actions had been taken 1 or 2 years earlier, do you think Donald Trump would be the president today? I am not in a position to speculate, but I will tell you that I would be far more better rested and less punched.
I bet this is probably the most softball interview of all time. Did he bring up the numbers of people who were crossing over? The tens of thousands, in some cases probably hundreds of thousands in those caravans that were just streaming and pouring across the border? I bet he probably wasn't pressed on any of that. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Politico. Councilwoman Inna Vernikoff. Sorry. This is an all-girls Jewish school in my district. I'm all for prayer and free speech, but why do a bunch of grown men, who also appear to be military-aged men, need to do this right outside of a school full of little Jewish girls? Is not this what mosques are for? Is this intentional? Mayor Mamdani, the New York City mayor, any words of wisdom on why all of a sudden they'd feel compelled to do this? So this is right outside a girls' school. What sounds like a girls' elementary school, Jewish school.
This is the front of the Jewish school, high school.
Oh, high school.
Do you see what's happening here? Because there's no mosque in the area to do this in front of you. You have to do it in front of a Jewish school.
I'm glad she's speaking up in front of them.
Nice, right?
Yeah, keep on keeping on. I'd just be shouting the whole time. Why are y'all doing this? You know, why are you standing in front of a Jewish school? Well, because they know what they're doing. They want to intimidate and, cause trouble. All right, so Senator Mike Lee, raise your hand if this person would have scared you to death as a child. So, all right, hold on. Before I play this, let's check this out from Libs of TikTok. I'll play that first video first, but I want to read this. Breaking, the Fresno County Board of Supervisors voted to block Pride Month activities at public libraries. This comes after a drag queen teacher showed up to the meeting demanding that libraries be kept as LGBTQ safe spaces. This is a massive win. Taxpayer-funded libraries should not be a space for grooming children. All right, so let's go back. Actually, it frankly looks like the exact same video. The timestamps are the same. Let's hear what this transgender teacher.
I'm Morgana. I am a drag
Look at
queen.
this dude shaking his head.
Activist. I am a substitute
Freedom.
teacher. I am part of County District Number 1, and I am here to advocate that libraries are safe spaces. Are part of our queer youth
for children,
30 to 40% in the Central Valley. They need this month, Mental Health Awareness Month. It's very important. So I'm really glad that we talked about this today because mental health issues are extremely important for our LGBTQ community.
Well, it's extremely prevalent.
And that's why libraries are safe spaces. They are more than just to go for books. They are for warmth. They are for our unhoused youth. They are for all people.
They're for
so
books.
Please remember, keep libraries safe. If Fresno City College can fly a pride flag, if Fresno State can fly a pride flag, why can we not at the library?
The fuck does that have to do with safety?
Thank you.
Literally nothing. Oh yeah, because everything's just magically safer when you fly a freaking pride flag, because they haven't turned that into an insanely divisive symbol these days, which is a damn shame because it didn't used to be that way. All right, Tudor Dixon, shocking. The Office of Refugee Resettlement funded project manager openly admits the Biden administration was sending unaccompanied children to live in U.S. factories and work as slave laborers to pay the cartels. Find out more on the Tudor Dixon podcast. Now, look, I'm just reading what I'm seeing. I don't want to get hit for misinformation. I'm not confirming or denying anything that's happening. I'm just reading what's coming across the news feed. And this is what she has to say. And by the way, Yolanda Gonzalez, she's a project manager operations at the Providencia Group, ORR National Call Center.
Not necessarily be a parent, but the sponsor is a potential trafficker. The child will call in and go something very simple like, I'm having trouble getting enrolled in school. Okay, which is real typical call for our kids. And we ask, okay, what do you have in your possession and where's sponsor? Are they having trouble enrolling you? Are you doing this by yourself? Blah, blah, blah. And you're looking for it. Oh, well, you were discharged a year ago. Did you ever go to school? No. Great, okay, that's fine. Can you tell me a little bit about that before we proceed to identify what we can give you to get enrolled in school? And now we get, well, I couldn't go to school because I was forced to work. Great, what you do with the money? It's great that you got a part-time job. Or it's like, no, this was my full-time job. I worked 12 hours. My sponsor owns a factory and put me to work there. And they told me that in a year I can go to school, but that I need to pay them for the trip here. And so
Coyotes.
I live with them in the factory. That's a red flag. When a kid says, oh yeah, sometimes I go home with them, but I live in the factory. Classic, right?
Yeah, probably happened to thousands of children. I mean, what was the number? It was up to 400, 500,000 children that were just completely missing. They were confirmed to have crossed the border, and then they were lost by the Biden administration, had no idea what happened to them. And Kash Patel's FBI, they've been able to locate, was it 12,000? It's in the teens, over 10,000. It's like 12,000, somewhere around there. Children that they've been able to recover, but there's still hundreds of thousands of children from other countries, and they're still missing inside our country. RNC Research unearthed Iowa Democrat Sarah Trone Garriott says she is uncomfortable with white people. I was just kind of shocked at how many white people there were. I was uncomfortable.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went back to northern Minnesota to visit, and I was just kind of shocked at how many white people there were. The feeling was very different. I'm like, whoa. I was uncomfortable in a different way.
Right. Well, if you're uncomfortable, then don't fucking go there. How about that? Just another crazed Democrat liberal white woman. I would advise against voting for them. All right, so Tom Cotton, what a record. The right level of illegal immigration is 0. Trump War Room, 12 straight months of 0 illegal aliens released at the border. 1 year of none, 0. You hear that, former Secretary Mayorkas? That's what you do. You don't release any of them. You make sure that the border is ironclad and secure. All right. And moving on to Mehek Cook. Exclusive. I sat down with real Tom Homan on what comes next. The border is far more secure. Now the fight moves inside America, where sanctuary politicians are blocking ICE and making enforcement harder. The border was step one. Taking back the interior is the real test. So this is, obviously, it's extremely long. It's 26 minutes. We're not going to get through all of it, but I'll repost it right away. There's a direct link below to my profile in the description, or you can also head over to Mehek Cook with an E at the end. You can go to her profile, but it's quicker if you just click on the link down in the description. It'll take you straight there. And we'll watch like a minute or two, kind of see where it goes.
Americans were promised a secure border, and by numbers, President Trump has delivered a dramatic turnaround. But the next major battle is unfolding inside the country, where sanctuary cities and states are refusing to cooperate with ICE, releasing the worst of the worst, dangerous illegal immigrants back into our communities and forcing federal agents into riskier street arrests. Today, I sit down with Border Czar Tom Homan to ask where he stands in terms of enforcement of immigration law, how the administration plans to fight back against sanctuary cities, and what real immigration enforcement looks like under the Trump administration.
Director, thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
You know, I really am excited to talk to you. I think that we look today at border safety, and the first name that everybody talks about is your leadership under President Trump. I know that Americans were told under this administration we would really work to secure the border and continue to control those numbers that are crossing. And I think they're controlled based on what we're seeing. I think now the real fight really is within the country, with sanctuary cities and with states refusing to cooperate with you and with ICE. In your opinion, is sanctuary cities the biggest obstacle right now that we're facing in immigration enforcement, or is it still the border?
No, look, we got the most secure border in the history of the nation right now, thanks to the work of those men and women wearing that green uniform. I mean, Trump 45 was the most secure border at that time, but we shattered that. Trump 47's most secure border in the history of the nation. So I would say there's two things we're fighting right now. It's the sanctuary cities, which is a big issue. It takes away a lot of our efficiencies, and the courts. Look, I think the court
definitely
system,
the courts.
You got some radical judges who make decisions in their district. They want to
no consequences for them,
which I think the Supreme Court addressed it, but they're ignoring it. So between sanctuary cities and many of the courts, that's our struggle right now.
The Supreme
but
Court.
We're going to keep overcoming that. We're not going to stop doing what we're doing, and we'll let the court system play out. But sanctuary cities, I know the Department of Justice has filed lawsuits on many of them, but they may slow us down a little bit by taking away our efficiencies of working with the jails, but they're not going to stop us from doing the job.
Well,
all right. Well, we got one question, and like I said, I have it reposted, so you can have a look at that. 26 minutes in total. But I do have a follow-up with Border Czar Tom Homan from the Daily Signal. Tom Homan, they hate Trump more than they love America. Ain't that the truth? I'm sure he's talking about the Democrats. Tom Homan sounds off on sanctuary cities, border policy, and why he believes Democrats are fighting the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. And do we got more quotes? It looks like we got more quotes. Okay, so there is a full episode. If I can get rid of that, there we go. So the full episode's over on YouTube. So I will add that. It's probably going to autoplay, so let me just pause it. There we go. All right, and we will give this a quick watch.
They hate Trump more than they care about their communities. They don't want President Trump to get a win. Second reason is we're spoiling their long-term plan. They got a long-term strategy here. Open the border up, release millions of people into the United States to go to sanctuary cities. But remember, when Biden opened the border, he also overturned the Trump census rule, which illegal aliens be counted in that census. So they think, send millions of sanctuary cities. The next census is done. It's going to result in more seats in the House for the Democrats. They sold this country's national security out for future political benefit.
Yeah, 100%. He is absolutely 100% correct. I've said that so many times, and it's not just me. Like I would say a sizable amount of America, they understand that too. That's what it was all about. That's why that they allowed the floodgates to open up and millions pour across the border, and that's why they established sanctuary cities, so they would all funnel into deep blue Democrat areas. So then they could add extra seats to the House. It's just that simple. In Homeland Security, a nice morning in Virginia. I think that's hinting at their plan to change it from ICE to NICE after somebody gave Trump that idea. Trying to remember who it was. I don't think it was really anybody. I think it was like just some random user on the internet somewhere just posed that idea, and somebody caught wind of it, and they put that idea in Trump's ear, and he's like, you know what? I actually like that. That's actually a pretty clever idea, changing it from immigration and customs enforcement to national immigration and customs enforcement. That way the mainstream media will have to start saying nice, not ICE, whenever they're trying to demonize ICE. They're going to have to start calling them nice, but I don't think that they would. I mean, they don't call the Department of War the Department of War. They still call it the Department of Defense in the mainstream news. So, But anyway, let's give this a watch.
Roughly 50%
Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen.
of the murders in Fairfax, Virginia, the perps are illegal. Shouldn't even be in the country to begin with. We have, politicians that want to protect the criminals. President Trump is still protecting all of our neighborhoods.
Yep, still doing the best they can do under the circumstances. And we got to follow up with Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen. This morning, I was on the ground with the men and women of ICE law enforcement in Virginia. We arrested a criminal illegal removed multiple times from our country, whose rap sheet includes drug possession and driving under the influence. Governor Spanberger's sanctuary policies have made Virginia a magnet for criminal illegal aliens. And he shared some images of the apprehension of the illegal, well, it looks like more than one illegal immigrant that they got a hold of. But yeah, I mean, a lot of them are repeat offenders. They've been arrested, they've been through the court system, they've been convicted, then they've been deported, and then they came back again. Around and around it goes. Homeland Security, ICE is there for a reason. They're supposed to be keeping these violent criminals out of the country, says Angel Mom Cheryl Minter.
I want to put up something that we had from the DHS secretary this morning, who was out on one of these, and he said, I was on the ground with the men and women of ICE law enforcement in Virginia. We arrested a criminal illegal removed multiple times from our country, whose rap sheet includes drug possession and driving under the influence. Governor Spanberger's sanctuary policies have made Virginia a magnet for criminal illegal aliens. What do you say to these lawmakers who make these decisions about the reality of what it means to someone like Stephanie and to your family?
I think these policies of keeping ICE away are just stupid.
They are.
ICE is there for a reason. They're supposed to be keeping these violent criminals out of our country, getting them out and making sure they don't come back.
Yeah, 100%. But it's all about the power grab. They just want power. They're putting their party over the country, the Democrats. From Defiant L's question, you say migrants in hotels should be deported. Where should they be deported to if their country isn't safe or if another country won't accept them? This is, by the way, is in the UK. This came up, and we're on the subject of immigration, and obviously the UK, they're having a big problem with migrants of their own. And since I came across this, I thought this was an interesting take on their situation. And Nigel Farage, he drops this here in this
You
video.
say migrants in hotels should be deported. Where should they be deported to if their country isn't safe or if another country won't accept them?
I'm sorry, I've had enough of this. If you come from Afghanistan, you go back to Afghanistan. End of. This idea we can't send people to certain countries, all the false claims that people make about their own personal lives. I'm sorry, we're done. We're done. We've had enough.
Yeah, I'm going to agree more. I think a lot of people in Britain are probably feeling the same way, just like the way we're feeling here too, being overrun with illegal immigration. Well, of course, the border's closed now. But yeah, and what determines a safe country? Who makes that determination? I mean, if you look at it from an overhead view, the United States, a lot of people would consider is a dangerous country. So pretty much every country in its own way is a dangerous country, or in her words, an unsafe country. So just the news, the FBI announced that the highest ranking ever official in Trinidad has been extradited from Colombia to the United States. So we're still cleaning up Kamala Harris's mess. And let's see, John Solomon reports, the FBI has successfully extradited a top-tier official known as Tukey from Colombia to face charges cleaning up border security.
In the meantime, that disaster that she presided over called the Biden border, just a few minutes ago, the FBI announced that the highest-ranking ever official in Trinidad has been extradited from Colombia to the United States. He went by the code name Tukey. He is a bad hombre. I mean, a bad dude. Yeah. We got him. He's going to appear in a Houston courtroom. So we're still cleaning up her aisle on mess on aisle 7.
Yeah, well, of course, naturally. And I'm sure he's never going to see freedom ever again. I can only imagine what he's being accused of, which I think we might find out a little bit of what he's being accused of. A case update. This is from the FBI. FBI Houston, Tren de Aragua leader extradited on terrorism and international drug distribution charges following Homeland Security Task Force investigation. Jose Enrique Martinez Flores, a.k.a. Chucky, alleged to be a high-ranking leader of Tren de Aragua in Bogota, Colombia, is set to make his initial appearance in Houston federal court for providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization in significant drug trafficking offenses. Learn more about the investigation right here, which I will have linked below. It's going to be over on justice.gov. Tren de Aragua leader extradited on terrorism and international drug distribution charges. And let's roll on to the next. Arrested. Oh, okay. So it's still talking about the same thing. Or no. This is somebody else. This is new. This is from Iraq. An Iraqi national accused of masterminding nearly 20 terrorist attacks across Europe and plotting strikes on Jewish institutions in the United States has been extradited to New York to face federal terrorism charges following what the FBI called a significant international operation. According to authorities, Mohammed Bakr Saeed Dawood al-Sadi and his associates have been planning and directing 18 attacks since early March on behalf of Ashab al-Yaman, a pro-Iranian Islamist group. The organization has claimed responsibility for assaults on Jewish schools, synagogues, and charities in Europe, as well as targets linked to American, Israeli, and Iranian opposition figures. And here's a couple images of them landing right here in the U.S. in New York, where he's going to face those terrorism charges. So there we go. FBI kicking ass and taking names. Brianna Morello, the DOJ will seek the death penalty for Elias Rodriguez, the man accused of fatally shooting 2 Israeli embassy staff members outside a Jewish museum in Washington, prosecutors said in a court. Rodriguez faces federal hate crime and murder charges in the killings of Yaron Lischinski and Sarah Milgram. The victims were leaving an event at the museum last May. According to his indictment, Rodriguez shouted, "Free Palestine," during the shooting and later told police, "I did it for Palestine. I did it for Gaza." So that also happened this week. And from Eric Dougherty, update: the U.S. Coast Guard has sent liberals into rage mode after they unloaded shots on narco-trafficking boats off the coast of Colombia. These narcos tried to flee. In response, they got their engines blasted. Crews ultimately stopped 3 boats in one operation, seizing 6,000 pounds of cocaine, and it can no longer reach America. Trump and Rubio were clear. The narco strikes will continue no matter what. This is our hemisphere. I don't know if they were throwing dye packs, maybe, just so they can find them more easily. I guess they looked like they were heading out somewhere, maybe to return. But yeah, man, dude's got to be a hell of a good shot in order to be doing that from a freaking helicopter, trying to shoot a target that's in the water, moving around. All right. Senate Republicans, for Democrats, high gas prices are a feature, not a bug. So we're going to talk about gas for a couple of posts. Under Biden, Democrats intentionally restricted oil and gas production in the United States to raise prices and force a switch to green energy. Given the chance, they'll do it again. Yes, they will. Rapid Response 47. Secretary Wright, Chris Wright, with the Department of Energy. The U.S. is going to continue to grow our supply of crude oil and refined products. This is a temporary but meaningful interruption. Iran getting a nuclear weapon would be decades of threat to global energy markets, to peace and prosperity in the world.
Yeah, I think a good chunk of that is President Trump's energy dominance agenda. The world knows he's all in growing supply. The United States is going to grow our supply of crude oil and refined products. So while we have a temporary interruption, and it's a meaningful interruption, but to end Iran's threat of getting a nuclear weapon, that would be decades of threat to global energy markets, to peace and prosperity in the world. So President Trump's willing to lean in there. Yes, it's disruptive in the short term, but to end their ability to get a nuclear weapon and have the U.S. continue to grow our production and supply, I think people realize this is not a new world. This is a bump on the road, and we'll get through it.
Yeah,
I think a good
we got to do what we got to do. Rep Paulino Luna, reducing the cost built into every gallon of gas with my bill. The American Families Gas Tax Relief Act is one of the simplest ways we can deliver immediate, real relief to the American families and workers our country depends on. And here's a brief summary on H.R. 8795. Introduced by Rep Paulino Luna on May 13th, is titled To Provide a Fuel Tax Holiday, and also referred to as the American Families Gas Tax Relief Act. It seeks to temporarily suspend federal excise taxes on gasoline and diesel to lower pump prices and deliver immediate relief to families and workers. The bill is currently referred to the House Ways and Means Committee, and the full text is not yet available, but that's what she's working on now, trying to push that through Congress to give us a tax holiday on our gas. Not that that's probably going to help the blue states any, because I'm sure that they have extra taxes and probably taxes on top of those taxes with regard to gas. I mean, there's got to be a reason why California gas is routinely over, like, what, $5-6 a freaking gallon. And for breaking 911, check this out. Massive fire erupts at a gas processing facility in Venezuela's Lake Maracaibo, leaving multiple people injured. Holy cow. Not good. Yeah, it's shaky. All right, well, hopefully they get that under control. Dude was zoomed in way too much. It's kind of hard to watch. Just shaking the camera all over the place. Of course, it doesn't help that he's on the water. But yeah, man, that happened. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela. So let's hope that it doesn't get too bad down there. Not sure they didn't give any reason. I'm sure there's probably, something out there with regard to what they believe may have started it. But yeah, so they're dealing with that in Venezuela right now. Eric Daugherty, holy crap, Iran is being slammed for causing an environmental disaster by frantically dumping their oil near Karg Island because the storage is filling up. Again, I have no confirmation on this. I'm just reading what I'm reading. And, he doesn't give any exact sources, Eric Daugherty, that is. So this is on his account. Not trying to push any kind of misinformation, but this is the only place that I saw where this is being reported, although it does say at the Iran Watcher. So 49,000 followers. They've got a blue check mark. They don't have like the official like news gold check mark. So all I'm saying is just take it with a big grain of salt. So tens of thousands of barrels spilled, and now it's piling up along the Persian Gulf coastline. Where is the left announcing this? This is going to have horrific impacts on the ecosystem. Trump own ambassador Mike Waltz. Iran is now attacking the environment in addition to civilian targets, humanitarian aid, and civilian shipping. So here's a video clip. I mean, there's oil spilled somewhere. No doubt about that. So it doesn't look like a massive, substantial supply of oil. So I don't know. It could have been a few barrels that were knocked over, and that's off camera, perhaps, or maybe it did actually wash ashore. And it doesn't really appear that. Well, I mean, I guess there's not really a good angle to see if like the shoreline all the way across is coated with oil or not. But like looking down in the distance, it looked like it didn't go off too far. But I mean, the beach kind of curves around, so. But anyway, it's being reported by Eric Daugherty that they're dumping oil because they have nowhere to put it. So I don't know why they don't just, shut off their their oil wells and their drills and all that. From Red Pill Bot, back in 2004, the BBC warned that the Maldives would soon be uninhabitable. More than 2 decades later, reality says otherwise. They've exploded with growth. Fancy that. And I live just down the street from a very narrow beach, and it looks the exact same as it did over 20 years ago when I first moved here. The beach hasn't changed at all. And by their logic, the climate change alarmists, that beach should have been long gone, like at least 5-10 years ago. But nope, looks the exact same. Anyway, let's take a look at the Maldives.
In 2004, the BBC warned the Maldives were soon to be uninhabitable, claiming sea levels were rising 0.9 centimeters per year, and that 80% of the islands could vanish within a century. More than 2 decades later, though, reality says otherwise. The Maldives haven't sunk, they've exploded with growth. 12 new airports,
What do you know?
expanded international terminals,
12?
record tourism of over 2 million visitors a year, and more than 170 resorts, with 7 added in 2024. Instead of disappearing under the waves, this so-called paradise in peril has shown no statistically significant sea level rise since the 1980s, according to satellite data. Here we have another climate catastrophe headline completely undone by time.
You can see it moving, changing.
In 2000,
I was about to say, well, how do we know that's not just the same image and only the years are changing? But no, there was like, it was obviously changing from year to year, at least getting up into the teens. So, but yeah, man, the Maldives is an absolute paradise. I've never been, but that'd be amazing to go visit the Maldives. So yeah, it's the same alarmist that said that Florida would be halfway underwater by the year 2100, you know, trying to scare the shit out of the school children down here, trying to worry them that, oh my God, our cities are going to be all underwater in the next 50, 100 years. No, not. I mean, maybe someday. We are still coming out of the last ice age. I don't have the answers to everything. I don't know everything. What do I know? I just highly, highly doubt that it's going to happen, I don't know, within the next 1,000 years. It's going to be a very long time, I think, before something like that were to happen. All right, so the Daily Signal, Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley has invited the CEOs of Meta and Google and TikTok, US, and Snapchat to testify before Congress on June the 23rd. The hearing is titled, quote, "Is this social media's big tobacco moment?" end quote, and will focus on what these platforms are doing to kids. They've testified in courtrooms. Now they need to testify before Congress. Accountability is coming, said Senator Marsha Blackburn. Now, to be fair, at least Mark Zuckerberg, he's testified before Congress before. And I'm sure some remember when he was sipping the water like a robot. Like they were calling that extremely cringe and creepy and weird. Big tech to be grilled by Congress. Big tobacco moment. This is on the Daily Signal. This summer, big tech titans will be put in the hot seat on Capitol Hill. Well, they've been invited. I don't think they were subpoenaed. So, I mean, they might just simply say no. Which, of course, I guess they would subpoena them, perhaps, if they were to turn down the offer. But I don't think they're going to turn it down. I think they're going to show up because it'll make their companies look transparent and overall, you know, good, I guess. You know, if they show up. If they don't show up, it won't look good. All right, so on Friday, Axios reported that Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa, has invited the CEOs of Meta, Alphabet, TikTok, and Snap for a June oversight hearing. The CEOs in question are Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, Alphabet's Sundar Pichai, and TikTok's Xiaozi Chu, and Snap's Evan Spiegel. The June 23rd hearing will be called Examining Tech Industry Practices and the Implications for Users and Families. Is this social media's big tobacco moment? That's a hell of a title. Per a committee spokesperson, and I believe we already read, yeah, I think we already read that. That was the one that I clicked on, right? From the, no, okay, never mind. That's the Daily Signal, that's right. All right, so anyway, the hearing will be the first of its kind since 2024, when the committee grilled the CEOs of X, Meta, Snap, TikTok, and Discord on children's online safety. The committee's current ranking member, Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, is a critic of big tech and chaired the committee at the time of the 2024 hearing. Durbin has called for repealing Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which I just covered yesterday, the day before yesterday. I covered that this week right here on The Swamp. His dislike for Section 230, which protects online service providers and social media companies from being sued for what their users post. And Senate Judiciary Democrats, they say, Senator Durbin, 2 things we can do to stand up to big tech. Repeal Section 230. Let every American family access courts to enforce the protection of their children. We will see things happen dramatically if we do those 2 things. And I not only did I show this exact post the other day, I also played the video clip right here on The Swamp. The Democrat is also a critic of the rapid increase in data center construction, which he claims has led to a rise in energy costs, which, probably, to be fair, they probably have. Senators Marsha Blackburn, Republican of Tennessee, and Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, are also on the committee and co-authored the Kids Online Safety Act, a bill to regulate social media that passed the Senate in 2024 but did not get a vote on the House floor, which, to be fair, President Trump has signed a bunch of executive orders with regard to energy and AI data centers, and they're supposed to be constructing these data centers and building energy grids that are independent of the overall grid that the public accesses. So Blackburn said in a statement on X of the upcoming hearing, quote, "If these CEOs do not accept this invitation, we must force big tech's hand. They've testified in courtrooms, and now they need to testify before Congress. The tide is turning, and accountability is coming." Well, dude, they did testify before Congress in 2024. Or wait, no, hold on. That was the bill. Yeah, that was the bill. Well, I know Mark Zuckerberg did at least. All right. And I'm sure that there were others that also. Well, wait. Yeah, they actually said like what? The CEOs of X and all those other big techs. Yeah, here we go. Yeah. I thought it said 2024. The committee grilled the CEOs of X, Meta, Snap, TikTok, and Discord. And I'm assuming that's Snapchat. So, yeah, this wouldn't be their first time being testifying before Congress. From the Federal Reserve, in case you missed it, the 13th Annual Survey of Household Economics and Decision-Making, or SHED, offers insight into the financial well-being of U.S. adults and their families and provides important information about how people are faring in the economy. Not good. I mean, at least that's the standpoint that I have. I don't think that most people are doing very good at all. You know, things are rough these days for the middle class, especially for the middle class. Since 2013, the Federal Reserve Board has conducted the Survey of Household Economics and Decision-Making, which measures the economic well-being of U.S. households and identifies potential risks to their finances. The survey includes modules on a range of topics of current relevance to financial well-being, including credit access and behaviors, savings, retirement, economic fragility, and education and student loans. And so we've got, let me see, I think it's going to be this. Let me just make sure. No, that's not going to be it. There's a 2-page. All right, hold on. Let me find it. There's a 2-page overview. Okay, here it is. Yeah, it's 2 pages. So I'll go over a few of the bullet points, and of course I'll link this in the description. The overall financial well-being at 73%, the share of adults doing okay financially or living comfortably held steady last year in 2025, though certain demographic groups, including low-income, young, and Black adults, saw meaningful declines. And, quote, price increases remained the most common financial concern. Just above 9 in 10 adults said price increases were a minor or major concern, unchanged from the prior year. That said, the share citing price increases as a major concern declined 3 percentage points. Concerns about finding or keeping a job became more common in 2025, consistent with other evidence of a solid but softening labor market. 42% of adults said finding or keeping a job was either a minor or major concern, up from just 37%. Well, not just, that's still a high number, 37% in 2024. In contrast to people's perceptions of their own financial situation, consumer views on the national economy worsened over the prior year and remain much more pessimistic than before the pandemic. About 1/4, 25% of adults rated the national economy as good or excellent, down 3 percentage points from 2024, and 24 percentage points from 2019 before the pandemic. Yeah, because it freaking wrecked the economy. Employment and job quality. There's a small increase in layoffs and slightly fewer voluntary quits in 2025, indicating additional challenges for workers and job seekers. 15% of adults under the age of 30 were not working and said that not being able to find work contributed to them not working. So again, 15% of adults. It's still a high number, though, a high percentage. 1 in 4 workers had used generative AI in the prior month as part of their job. Workers with a graduate degree were more than 4 times more likely to use AI than those with a high school degree or less. 81% of people who use generative AI agreed that it saves them time. And living arrangements. The share of young adults who live with their parents has increased in recent years. In 2025, almost 50%, 49% of adults under the age of 30 lived with a parent. This share was up by 6 percentage points since 2022 and up 12% since 2019. 1 in 4 parents with children under the age of 13 used paid childcare. Most families who paid for both childcare and housing spent at least 50% as much on childcare as on housing. Good grief. 47% of adults, this is income and expenses. 47% of adults aged 18 to 29 received help from someone outside their household to pay an expense in the last year. Money for a cell phone bill, for general expenses, and for housing costs such as rent, mortgage, utilities were the most common forms of help those people received. A majority of adults, 58%, said the changes in the prices they paid compared with the prior year had made their financial situation worse. But this share was down from 60% in 2024 and 65% in 2023. Well, I don't know what the hell they're buying, but over the last year, I mean, I've noticed, well, I guess like groceries and whatnot, things have probably been relatively steady over the last year. However, nothing's gone down. Everything's either holding steady or continuing to increase. So I'm surprised that number is not a lot higher. Economic hardship. 16% of adults did not pay all of their bills in the prior month, and 8% said members of their families sometimes or often did not have enough to eat. Both measures were similar to 2024. 26% of adults skipped medical expenses because of cost in the prior year, down from 28% in 2024. 59% of adults had at least one type of major unexpected expense in the last 12 months. So let's see, savings and investments. 63% of adults said they would cover a hypothetical $400 emergency expense exclusively using cash or savings or a credit card paid off at the next statement. Again, that's 63% of adults. $400 emergency expense referred to altogether as cash or its equivalent. The share was unchanged from the previous year. But still, man, that's, at least it's the majority, but that's still a lot. What is that? Like 32% of adults, they can't pay a $400 emergency expense because they just simply don't have the money for it. Progress toward retirement savings goals was unchanged from 2024. And anyway, so it goes on into banking. 94% had a bank account. Almost all adults with income of at least $100,000 had a bank account, obviously. And then it gets into credit and housing. And it looks like it finishes off at housing. So some interesting bullet points that they released today, mostly from data and statistics from 2025. Not very many people saw this. Only 58 likes, only 13 comments, about 11,000 people got eyeballs on it. And you know, it doesn't mean that that 11,000 clicked on it. It just means they were just scrolling through their feed and it just, you know, they just scrolled right on past it. So, yep, Federal Reserve. All right. Rep Andy Biggs, the Monitor Accountability Act has passed the U.S. House. Official statement from May 14th, so yesterday. Quote, for over a decade, a court-appointed federal monitor for the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office has cost $350 million in taxpayer dollars and undermined the work of brave men and women in law enforcement, compromising the safety of innocent Arizonans. This is just one story of these monitors operating without oversight across the country and creating chaos in their wake. The destructive effects of these monitors on government budgets and public safety necessitate congressional action, which is why I've introduced the Monitor Accountability Act. I'm thankful for its passage in the House, and I urge the Senate to quickly take up this legislation and send it to the president's desk. And I'm sure that's, you know, they released this, or he got it passed this week because it's National Police Week, so it kind of fits within, you know, that. All right, so Steve Scalise, closing out Police Week by lighting my Capitol office blue to honor the brave men and women in uniform. I know firsthand the heroism of our police officers, and I'll always be grateful for their courage and sacrifice. The dude's got a big-ass office, man. That's all his office. Good grief, man. That's a hell of an office, Steve Scalise. Must be nice. Well, he's the whip, right? No, House Majority Leader. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember who's the whip or the Majority Leader. And from America 250, tomorrow's the day. Good Neighbor Day in Good Neighbor Day America is almost here, and tomorrow is your chance to show up for your community with kindness, care, and action. Big gesture or small, it all counts. Be part of it and find local service opportunities at goodneighbordayamerica.com. And I didn't see where it went, so I'll just click it again. Oh yeah, there it is. All right, so let me just click off that. Just have a quick look at it. Join thousands of organizations and millions of good neighbors. So a lot of information here if you want to participate in that. Good Neighbor Day America, which is happening tomorrow, May 16th. And this is the first time I'm seeing it. If I saw it earlier, I certainly would have shown it the other day. So that way it wouldn't be so last minute. But here we go with a quick clip.
Always be kind. You never know what someone is going through. Most people are carrying pain on the inside, and your kindness might be the reason they find the strength to face another day.
Okay, from America 250 from their account. And let's roll on to the next one, with that happening over the weekend. The Associated Press from 8 hours ago as of this recording. Breaking: judge declares a mistrial in Harvey Weinstein's forceful penetration retrial after the jury says it is deadlocked. You know, because YouTube they don't like it when you say the R word, so why not, illustrate it in another way? So anyway, this is crazy because I think he's already been put on trial like 3 times. I believe this is his 3rd trial, and they declared a mistrial, which is absolutely crazy. So, all right. Oh, wow. It looks like they're interviewing one of the jurors. So let's have a listen to this.
I think the general consensus is that the witness, there was a lot of contradictions in her statements. When it came time for the prosecution, a lot of people felt that
Dude looks
she
like
had
Kramer,
incredible memory. When it came time to defense, a lot of people felt she forgot a lot of things. And so it kind of spoke a little
probably a long
bit
time
to
ago.
her credibility. But, it was close. It was not, clear cut right down the line. It was
Has to
just
be beyond a reasonable doubt.
So it was a really tough decision. I think in general, we feel kind of, upset that we couldn't come up with a verdict. But we tried. We tried really hard.
We don't know. And we also wanted to believe, like, let's play with this. Like, we do believe her and this did happen. How can we convince, but not everyone can be convinced enough because it's just trusting her word for it. And then there were places where we couldn't trust her word for it, and that's where it leads to a seat of doubt.
I'm very grateful for a jury of New Yorkers for listening to the evidence so closely. Obviously,
wow, this happened in New York too.
I'm disappointed that it wasn't 12-0.
With Harvey Weinstein.
I am grateful, though, that there
Believe
was
all women.
The
Hashtag
right
me
amount
too.
of questioning of the people's case. We felt like we made our points. We feel like the jury heard our points. We feel like by virtue of the jury's notes, they were picking up on what we were saying in our cross-examination and our summation. And we are going to encourage the district attorney's office to not try this case again. In my view, they're lucky to have won over 3 jurors. And I don't think there's any scenario where they're going to do better than that.
Yeah, and jurors, when they sit on a jury, they do take it very seriously when you go through the whole process, the whole procedure. And I sat on one criminal jury, a 6-person jury. This would have been back in 2009. It was a long time ago. And then I sat on a grand jury for 7 months. I think we saw 17 cases in total. All of them were murder. Every one of them, all murder cases. And very an interesting process. Fascinating, really, especially if you're into courtroom drama, which I am. I'm almost obsessively watching courtroom stuff on YouTube, like all kinds of courtroom stuff, and a lot of police interviews, interrogations. There's like a whole treasure trove of all that stuff here on YouTube. But yeah, and like I said, especially coming from New York, that they were deadlocked. That just really takes me by surprise. So it just goes to show that, they might believe one thing, or they might have one political take, or they might, believe in certain political ideologies like hashtag me too and so on and so forth. But once they're in the hot seat in the jury and they're going through the whole process, it's just a whole different thing. They might just the jury's not supposed to know who Harvey Weinstein is. I mean, ideally, nobody's supposed to know anything about the case. That's all part of the whole jury selection process. Although, once you're in it and you're reviewing everything, and then you go back behind closed doors and you start mulling over all the information, it sometimes can be really difficult to make that decision, whether if there was actually if they are guilty beyond any reasonable doubt. Or maybe Harvey Weinstein just had some insanely kick-ass rock star lawyer who was incredibly gifted at manipulating the jury. I mean, it also could be that simple too, maybe. All right, well, that's a first. My computer crashed, and it completely just ended my video. So either I'm going to stitch the 2 parts together and upload them together, but if that takes too long, I guess I'll probably just upload these 2 separate. So my apologies if the video probably just ended abruptly. This is most likely a part 2 of The Swamp from Friday, May the 15th, 2026. And I'm almost at the end. That really irritates me that that really sucks. My freaking computer crashed. But anyway, so we'll just move on to autopilot breaking. SpaceX set to IPO under the ticker SPCX. And SpaceX shares to begin trading on June the 12th. So SpaceX going to start trading shares. And I don't know if I'm going to get in on this or not. Maybe I will. I mean, I've always had a thing for SpaceX because I've always been real big into astronomy. So, I mean, that sounds like perhaps an opportunity. I don't think that SpaceX is going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Probably nowhere but up, like, you know, literally and figuratively and financially. So this is the reason that a lot of people are speculating that Elon Musk may become the world's first trillionaire in a very short amount of time. Because once SpaceX goes public, his net worth is going to skyrocket. Literally, figuratively, financially, so on and so forth. All right, so moving on to Eric Daugherty. Now residents are furious that Waymo autonomous cars are flooding their neighborhoods for no good reason, piling up and using the cul-de-sac to turn around in Atlanta, Georgia. The cars just circle for hours on end. What a nightmare. Residents tried to stop it with a child crossing sign and it only made it worse. Well, yeah, I'm sure it made it worse. They probably just stopped and quit moving because they thought a child was in the middle of the road. So I don't know why they didn't just remove the sign so they can let them proceed. But yeah, this sounds like an absolute nightmare. So let's have a look.
This is usually a place where the neighbors say you can walk around with your loved ones in the morning or you can play with your dog, but now it feels like a main road. The cars have no passengers and they just circle for hours on end. So neighbors have tried to use one of those signs of a kid playing to deter the cars from using their cul-de-sac to turn around, but that just turned it into a parking lot. Waymo says they use a third party to manage their fleet in the Atlanta area, and they're working on a solution, telling Fox Business this: "At Waymo, we are committed to being good neighbors. We take community feedback seriously. We value our relationship with Atlanta residents and remain focused on providing a seamless, respectful, and safe experience for riders and residents alike." Now, this comes the same month Waymo recalled over 3,700 cars. The National Transportation Safety Administration found Waymo's vehicles do not know how to assess floodwater danger. You can see video of a Waymo trapped in floodwaters in Arizona from last year.
Yikes.
Now, this all comes as in California, starting July 1st, law enforcement will be able to ticket Waymos, and the ticket will go to the manufacturer of the autonomous vehicle, so not just a Waymo. And this is important because just in this Santa Monica neighborhood, we know that a child was struck by a Waymo earlier this year. John?
Okay, well, that's not good. I was about to say, well, you know, it's kind of hilarious that they're going to be able to start ticketing these Waymo vehicles. I've always kind of wondered that and never really mentioned it anywhere, that if a Waymo is driving, which I don't see how it could break any traffic laws if it's completely autonomous. However, what if a police car got behind the Waymo and wanted it to stop, so they, you know, flipped on the berries and cherries and tried to pull it over? Would a Waymo actually stop? Would it adhere to emergency? Well, yeah, of course it would, right? It would, because, you know, what if a fire truck is cruising by? Of course it's going to pull over. However, if it got up behind it, would it just start driving again? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that must suck for them living in the suburbs of that cul-de-sac with nonstop Waymos just driving through constantly. I mean, what the hell do? You call the police? What are the police going to do? The police can't do anything. You get a hold of the company, but good luck really probably getting a hold of anybody. You're probably just going to get a hold of some who knows who in customer service. They're not going to know how to handle it. You get passed around for hours on end just to end up, you know, right back where you started. All right, so breaking number one, a hero. A Tennessee police officer kicked down the door of a burning apartment and rescued a mother and her two children, carrying the 4-year-old girl to safety. No injuries were reported. So typically on Friday, sometimes I'll play, you know, videos that are non-swamp related that I come across, and that's where we're at. We're right here. So let's give this a watch.
There's fire! There's fire! There's fire! There's fire! Did you get to the door? Come on, y'all get out. Come on. Hey, y'all gotta get out of the house.
Man, he just runs right in. There's the 4-year-old. And the other two. Wow, man. Absolute hero. The police, they deal with so much shit, man. They never get paid enough. And it's despicable that the other party, the left-leaning party, that they treat them the way that they treat them. It's despicable. And from Chandra Observatory. So getting to the end of the video, or what should have been the end of the video. And until my freaking OBS crashed. All right, so Westerlund 2 is a young cluster of thousands of stars located about 20,000 light years from Earth. This close-up image, roughly 12 light years across, combines observations from NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory and NASA's James Webb Space Telescope. Gorgeous image. I wish I could zoom in, but it's X. X platform won't let me zoom in. But anyway, I will give that a repost. And they usually share a link. Let me see if they actually have a link, because they often, well, let me, no, they didn't. All right. Well, often they would share a link where you can go and you can view it in a much larger image. So if you want to zoom in and check it all out. But yeah, man, 12 light years across from end to end. It's a very, very large section of space, and shown by the Chandra Observatory. And I have one more to wrap things up with. From NASA, today, a resupply mission launched to the space station aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket bearing the Freedom 250 logo. This mission carries several special items to celebrate this historic milestone, including semi-quincentennial commemorative coins from the U.S. Treasury and from the U.S. Mint, along with multiple sets of new USPS stamps and our own NASA Freedom 250 patches. For more information about our celebration of America's 250th year, you can visit nasa.gov/freedom250 down below in the description, and we'll check out the launch.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Dragon, and go CRS-34.
And liftoff. NASA's SpaceX-34 commercial resupply services mission carrying over 6,500 pounds of cargo and supplies is on its way to the International Space Station.
Rock and roll with SpaceX.
3, 2, 1.
Heading up to the International Space Station for the resupply mission, delivering the goods and America's 250 commemorative stuff, the stamps, the coins, all that good stuff. And that's going to do it for this episode. So if you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like and subscribe, and I'll be back on Monday night as we explore the swamp Monday through Friday. And I also post daily on X, which is where you can peek at some of the content for the next episode. And don't forget, the video clips from tonight will begin dropping on the channel tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for watching. God bless the troops, and God bless America.